Next Door Radio. We're going to be speaking with Robert Morris, candidate for Granville County Sheriff. I'm Mike Snyder, a reporter for Next Door Radio Decision this year, and I look really forward to meeting the candidates. And tonight we're going to start our interview rounds this year with Robert Morris, candidate for Granville County Sheriff. Welcome, Mr. Morris, to the program.
Thank you, Mike, and thank you, Trey, for the opportunity.
Well, let's just get started. Basically, I like to start these things with, can you tell us a little bit about your background, kind of for the listeners that have never heard of Robert Morris? Just kind of give us some background, your story, how you grew up, and we'll kind of take it from there.
Okay, absolutely, Mike. So I was born in North Carolina. My dad was in the Army. I was born at Fort Bragg. He married my mother. She's from South Korea. And we relocated to Colorado, and that's where I grew up as a child into my young adult years. After high school, I ended up joining the military. I joined the Navy in 1986, and I didn't look back. You know, I shipped over to San Diego. I did a tour overseas, back to the United States, served in Washington, D.C., the area over there. At that point, I was thinking about getting out and going into corporate America, into the medical dental field, as far as equipment installation, repairs. It was really a lucrative opportunity. But I had a deep conversation with a lot of people, because it was at that teeter-totter point, whether if you're going to get out now before you put too much time in, or go ahead and make it a career. And, you know, some of the vets that I talked to said, oh, I wish I would have stayed in. I wish I would have stayed in. So I went ahead and made the commitment, and I stayed in. But they gave me an opportunity to kind of negotiate some orders, and they offered me probably one of the best billets you could get, and that was to be stationed overseas in Rota, Spain.
Oh, wow.
And I never considered that to be a job. It was more or less a working vacation. I stayed there for 2 years, had a great time over there. It was probably one of my most rewarding tours that I had in the military. After that, I accepted orders to Camp Lejeune. I went to field medical school, where I got lots of training for first aid and how to work with the Marines. And I stayed there until my retirement in 2007. Some of the highlights in my Navy career, I was meritoriously promoted. Once I received Sailor of the Year twice, and I earned the rank of Chief Petty Officer.
Very good.
So, you know, that was kind of my military career in a nutshell. But in 2007, my children were 2, 4, and 6 years old. So
oh, wow.
It wasn't really a retirement. It was a second career choice. Now I needed to go look for another job.
Right. Sure. Well, how long total was your Navy career?
Well, I have the exact amount. It was 20 years, 5 months, and 23 days, sir.
There you go. That's pretty good. Oh, my goodness. Well, it sounds like you extremely successful in the Navy. Got yourself up through the ranks, just kind of moved up like an everyday person just has to, out here in the working world, move themselves up. It sounds like you did that in the Navy as well. We appreciate your service, by the way. Thank you very much for all you did for our country, for sure. Also, I read that you were in local law enforcement or local law enforcement officer. Can you kind of expound on that a little bit?
Absolutely, Mike. So with my children being so young, and you know, and myself, I was just 41 years old. So I really wanted to find something that, they say if you find something you enjoy doing and you make a living at it, then you never work a day in your life, right? So,
sure.
You know, the world is kind of black and white to me. It's either right or wrong. And as a leader in the military, your main job is to kind of groom your troops, you know, develop them and look after them, be a mentor. So I have a passion for the outdoors. And so I applied and I became a North Carolina state game warden. and I was accepted. They tell me 300 to 400 people apply for those positions, and I was fortunate enough to have an opportunity to do that. So I went off and went to the Wildlife Basic School, and I took some orders to Beaufort County, North Carolina, down there on the coast.
Sure.
But unfortunately, in life, sometimes you can control things and sometimes you can't, and some unforeseen circumstances arose, and I had to leave the Wildlife Commission.
Oh, good.
So I wanted to continue my law enforcement career, and my wife and I had some conversation about where we should relocate. Camp Lejeune has 30,000 Marines down there, and most of them being single, and I have 2 daughters. So I said, let's move a little more inland.
That's funny.
Not that I don't love my Marines. I have a lot of Marine friends, and I love you guys. But I wanted to keep my daughters close to home with me. So we moved up here towards Raleigh, and I took a job with Creedmoor Police Department and stayed there about close to 7 years.
Gotcha.
So after Creedmoor, I made a little tour down there in Franklinton, North Carolina. Stayed there just under a year, and an opportunity opened up in Vance County as a school resource officer.
Gotcha.
And it was a Monday through Friday gig, and maybe I had an opportunity to change somebody's life up there. And when I got to Vance County, they sent me to an inner city middle school, and to be honest with you, I didn't know what I got into. To have that many young teenagers like that, and
especially middle school,
it was challenging. It was very challenging, but very rewarding also, because you do get an opportunity to change somebody's life. An opportunity. I was there for about 9 months at the school. I moved over to CID, which is Criminal Investigation Division, and I worked as an investigator, everything from breaking and enterings to homicide.
Wow. Also
during that time, I was selected to be a tactical medic on the SWAT team in Vance County. And so that's, you're kind of never off from work. You're always on standby. And but this kind of profession, a lot of people choose it because it's a calling. And I really never felt like it was work. It was always just what I needed to be doing. I was really close to reaching my retirement age. I could have stayed as long as I wanted, but I left Vance County. I don't think anybody needs to ask me why the things that go up there, maybe why I left, because unfortunately, it could be just a great community with Carl Lake being right there. But if I'm always going to tell the truth and be transparent about stuff. We've got a serious problem in Anderson, and it's the heroin capital of Central North Carolina.
Wow.
And unfortunately, I've had to knock on way too many doors for overdoses, and we have a real issue right here. We have an issue with the heroin, the trafficking, the dealers, and unfortunately, the addicts. They can get it readily available to them. So I kind of had to do some soul searching. I left and I went to the town of Youngsville. I worked down there till I reached my retirement age of 55, and got a knock on the door. Well, it was more or less a phone call, but corporate America came looking, and they were looking for police officers to work in the civilian sector. So I went ahead and put my retirement papers in, and now I work as a private police officer.
Wow. Gotcha. Very good. Well, thank you for all that. I appreciate that. Very interesting history and background for sure. You talk about on your one of your platforms is there's broken systems in our government currently. Can you just kind of expound on what you think is broken and kind of maybe what some things you'll do to correct that if elected sheriff?
Absolutely, Mike. If anybody watches the news or just goes to the grocery store and looks at the prices of groceries, the increase, and even at the gas pumps, we're in the hurt locker, to be honest with you. I just don't, people are struggling day to day, paycheck to paycheck, and I hope we have some relief in the future. With that being said, I kind of feel like I can't really help it at that level, but I can help it back home. And in Granville County is where my home is. I chose to make this my home. This is my home. And we have our own issues here. Unfortunately, we've had some issues within our sheriff's office that has tarnished the badge, and we've had a lot of bumps on the road. And so, doing some soul searching and lots of prayer on it, I decided that I'm going to run for sheriff. And there's no reason to sit back and not do anything about it. I'm going to step up and offer my services.
Very good. You also talk about a little bit about traffic enforcement. What's your stance on traffic enforcement, and what are some ideas maybe you have to help with that?
Yes, Mike. Being a city cop in small towns, a lot of times you really don't have the call volume, so you work a lot of traffic, and that's Chapter 20 within our North Carolina state laws. So there's a lot of things that fall under Chapter 20, and it can be from speeding to DWIs to, tires and window tint. I want to clear something up for the record. There's rumor out there that, I'm out there writing window tint tickets when I was a police officer. Let me just be clear on this. The window tint tickets that I wrote are for the entire front glass of a car. The tickets that I wrote is when somebody has a vehicle and their entire front windshield is tinted black from top to bottom, side to side. Those are the window tint tickets I write. Your normal side windows, I don't stop those. But I believe that traffic enforcement deters crime. Criminals don't like blue lights. It scares them, and they don't like it. But also, let me give you an instance. If you see somebody speeding, and it's almost to the point of careless and reckless, in Granville County, people know the deputies aren't going to stop you. It's just only highway patrol or city municipalities are going to stop you. And that is sad, because our deputies swore an oath to uphold the law, and not just parts of the law. And I'm not saying we're going to go out there and be super troopers, but if you see something that's careless and reckless and it needs to be stopped for the motoring public, then you need to take the enforcement action. That doesn't mean that you have to get a citation, but that person speeding like that could be on their way to the hospital, or could have a medical emergency or something tragic going on, and you need to stop and see if you can render aid. I mean, you just never know what goes on. And, Chapter 20, the motor vehicle law, you can deter a lot of crime that way. Yeah, I'm telling you, bad guys don't like blue lights.
Again, we are speaking with Robert Morris. He's candidate for Granville County Sheriff here on our Decision 2022 and our local talk program on Nextdoor Radio and nextdoorradio.com. Mr. Morris, I kind of want to play off a little bit more about what you said. You've been in Youngsville, you've been in Vance County, you've been in Creedmoor, part of the police department. What is different, and what do you think should be changed in the Granville County area that is not necessarily different from what you've seen in your career, but what is making a difference, and the reason why you would become sheriff of Granville County? What is the difference that you see here that you can do?
Yes, Trey. So back in 2012, I applied, and I went to go see the former sheriff and asked him for a job with the county. I thought I could bring my talents and my experience to that level. But what I've seen over the last few years is not a lot of good things. We have been on the news, we have been on the national news about the issues, and they've been going on for decades. And I just feel leadership. We need new leadership in the Granville County Sheriff's Office. It's been the same old status quo for so long, and there's no you know, just for the promotion boards, it was always just, hey, I know you get promoted. Now, recently I've seen them having a board and doing things the right way, but I want to bring so many good ideas to them, and I want to work with each deputy and bring in their ideas also. But, you know, training, we have to get in front of this stuff. I don't see them aggressively taking training as a priority. I was in on as a local law enforcement for 12, 13 years, and I received my advanced law enforcement certificate. And to earn that, you have to get a lot of training hours. But what I see at that agency currently is they're not taking advantage of the training that's offered at these community colleges. Well, if we're not keeping up to date with our training and bringing in good talents, I mean, the stuff that they teach us at the schools, then we can't apply that. We can learn from people who've been doing the job for a while, but there's also the right way of doing things and there's the wrong way of doing things. So I think that what we really need is new leadership in there, and I'm echoing this because that's what I'm hearing around the county.
Yes, sir. Now, that kind of plays off with one of our next questions that we do have,
Okay.
Mr. Morris, regarding the sheriff responsibilities. Obviously, you've been a police officer, you've been knocking on doors with the hair problem that we see in Vance County. With me working in and out, I know exactly what you're referring to regarding the Vance County area. But what are the responsibilities of the sheriff, in your opinion, that you can bring to the table?
The sheriff has a huge responsibility. They're responsible for every square mile that's not incorporated within this county. And so that's a lot of area. And you're responsible for civil law, and you're responsible for serving papers. You're responsible for keeping up with the sex offender registry and checking on those folks and making sure that you keep your thumb on their pulse so you know where they're at. We're in charge of courthouse security to make sure those people are safe when they go to court, to protect our prosecutors, our defense attorneys, our judges. So those have a very important part. We're in charge of housing our inmates, you know, getting them transported back and forth to court. Some of them are sentenced and they go right back into the jail and they serve their sentence there. And, you know, and I believe that sheriff's office, we need to take care of all laws, we just don't pick and choose which laws we want to do. You have to really focus on everything. And I want to put people where they're talented and put them in those places where they're happy and they're productive.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
Very good. Well, I guess to wrap up our conversation today, Mr. Morris, could you just kind of tell us in an elevator type pitch, why should the citizens of Granville County vote for Robert Morris to be the next sheriff?
They can trust me, sir. They can go to sleep every night knowing Rob Morris is running the sheriff's office. They don't have to worry about anything. I'm always going to tell the truth, and I'm going to do what I tell them I'm going to do. I'm going to have my phone number out there. I mean, they can call me. I'm going to have an open door policy, and we'll have time set up that, hey, if you need to talk with me, you come in during these times. Now, if somebody is not able to come and see me, I'll go to them. I want to be a working sheriff. I know the duties of the sheriff, there's a lot of administrative duties in there, but I'll be a working sheriff. If I'm on my way to work and I see an issue going on, I'm going to divert from my way to work, and I'm going to go. If I'm the closest guy there, I'm going to go there. I'm going to back up my deputies. And you know, for instance, let's say I have 5 deputies patrolling the county, and I got one deputy who's called out sick. I've got a deputy who's doing a mental health transport to the mountains. I've got a deputy who's on his way to the hospital with his wife because she's having a baby. Those are things you can't control. Well, that leaves me with 2 deputies for the entire county. Well, if I hear about it, I'm going to put my boots on and I'm going to work. I'm going to help those guys out. And that's the kind of leader I am. I lead by example. I'm not going to ask my guys to do anything that I wouldn't do.
Fantastic. Now, I like ending these segments with the last couple of minutes to kind of give you an open table to discuss anything that we haven't asked or said. So next couple of minutes, just kind of have a round table discussion of a few things that you want to make sure our listeners know about Robert Morse.
Yes, sir. My law enforcement career hasn't been easy. There's been a lot of bumps in the road, but I survived. And I made retirement, and I have a great job now. And honestly, I would be fine if I didn't run. I would still be okay, but it's not me. I can't just sit back and let this stuff happen. We've got people who work for the sheriff's office who are pending going to prison. And there's a lot of people who still work there that, honestly, in my opinion, if you didn't say nothing, then, I mean, you probably should have. And I want to squash a rumor that I'm going to get in there if I'm elected and go and fire people. Well, that's false. These men and women of Granville County who swore the oath, took that oath and chose that profession. What I'm going to do is give them an opportunity, a clean slate, get in there, you keep your jobs, you have families to take care of, and you chose this profession. But I will work with you, and let's get together and get this thing done together. If they have a different idea than I do, I want to hear it, because my ideas aren't always the best ideas. They're just one idea, and they might have a better idea. So that right there, I'm not going to go in there and fire nobody. If somebody doesn't want to work for me, and the people have spoken, and Robert Morse is the man that got elected or is chosen to be elected, and the deputies don't want to work for me, well, you know what? That's fine. Keep your job. Don't leave. If you choose to want to look for another job, then that's fine. But stay there at Granville County, and I bet after 3 months, you're going to realize that's probably going to be one of the best places you ever worked. The other thing I kind of want to crush a rumor is that I'm soft on crime. Anybody that knows me knows that I'm not soft on crime, and drug dealers especially. I made a statement early on in early summer that I would go up if there was a known drug dealer. I would go to the door, knock on there, and say, "Hey, you're selling drugs. You need to stop that." Well, I probably should explain myself more on that, and I'm going to do that now. What it is called a knock and talk. And I have done that before. If I know that there's a known drug dealer, my idea about going to that door is to gather intel. And I hate showing my cards right now because there's going to be criminals who listen to this. But it's a way for me to gather in the information. I might want to know, hey, is there a dog in the house? Which way does that door open? How many people are there? What kind of cars are there? For future information. So I'll be honest with you. Everybody that knows me has worked with me. I'm tough on crime, especially drug dealers. If you're planning on selling drugs in Granville County, then plan on going to jail. I'm going to leave that part at that.
Candidate Robert Morris for the Granville County Sheriff's race. Mr. Morris, we appreciate your time. We wish you the best, and we stand to support politics in Granville County with Next Door Radio, and our Decision 2022 coverage will continue throughout this race to cover all the issues and to be there and be the eyes and ears of the Granville County community. This has been Decision 2022. Mike Snide and Trey Snide reporting.